Call a meeting to order. And we'd like to introduce Mike and his group of Calendar law firm. They're going to be doing the minute meetings with us. Michelle Parrish is no longer with us, and so we've engaged with them to do meeting minutes as well. So with that, can you want to go ahead and do the roll call?
Director Bog,
Here.
Director Amon,
Here.
Director Fix,
Yes.
Director Hondrew,
Here.
Director Old,
Here.
Director Mason,
Here.
Director Miller,
Here.
Director Simmons,
Here.
Director Kozlowski, here, Director
Where's Vicky?
Where's Vicky?
Here.
Director Cox, here, Director Dodge,
Here.
Director Greenhouse,
Here.
Director Hohottle,
Here.
Director Picarelli, here, Director Kidd,
Here.
Director Portman,
Here.
Director Royson,
Here,
Forums, we can move forward. I'd like to introduce Matt Old from Region 19. He's our new appointee. Matt, can you raise your hand, please? Welcome. Glad to have you.
thank you.
And I'd also like to acknowledge the expert panel, level custard appointed by the governor. I believe they may or may not be on virtual. Yes, she's there. Deb Flores, governor appointee, and John Sprague from the Attorney General's office. With that, we'll move right into the approval of the January meeting minutes. Great. Any, okay, any question or discussion, corrections? Hearing none, like to get a, all in favor, signify by
We're gonna do a roll call.
okay, roll call.
Member Bog,
Yes.
member Amon,
Yes.
member Fix,
Yes.
member Hondrew,
Yes.
member Old, member Mason,
Yes.
member Miller,
Yes.
member Simmons,
Yes.
member Kozlowski, yes, member Vicky,
Yes.
member Cox, yes, member Dodge,
Yes.
member Greenhouse,
Here. Yep.
member Hohottle,
Yes.
member Picarelli,
Yes.
member Kidd,
Yes.
member Portman,
Yes.
member Royson,
yes, I just wanted to make sure they got corrected to reflect that I was there for the January meeting.
and member McCully. Yes.
Okay.
All right, motion carries. And before we move on to the Kittleman presentation, we do have a very, very tight schedule for today. Not a lot on the agenda, but a lot to talk about. I'd like to commend Catherine and Connie for putting together the MOU pocketbook. There's a box up there. And this is kind of the, well, actually, it's not even abbreviated version, it is the version. So congratulations, a lot of hard work went into this and you carry it in your pockets. So, good job. We all did.
But you all do need the MOU, and just so you know, a few highlights. Obviously, the first part is the MOU, which is our guiding document that led us to the Code of Regulations. But the is a regional map as well as the allocation set forth in the MOU. So you have it at your fingertips now. So we will be asking that the directors here today take this back to their regions. We will give you copies to share with them.
And with that, we'll move right into the presentation from Kittleman. We have Corey. Oh, there you go. From Kittleman, if you want to introduce yourself, Corey, and then Michelle is on. There's Michelle. And they're going to give a brief overview, about 30 minutes, and then 15 minutes for questions about the executive search, and then we're going to go into the executive session. So with that, Corey and Michelle, if you want to kick it off. And
great. I'll start since I'm here in the room and just say thank you for the invitation to be with you here today. We're really excited to be working with you on this very important endeavor and certainly the impact that it will have across the state. So thanks for the opportunity to be here to provide this update. Michelle and I are just going to quickly introduce ourselves very, very quickly, and then we'll jump into our abbreviated agenda here. Yes, I will. I do have a lower list. Thank you for the. So I will speak up. I will project better. Thank you. Michelle, would you just take a brief minute to introduce yourself?
Certainly. I hope you all can hear me. Can you? Thumbs up. Thank you very much for having us here this morning. My name is Michelle Sadler. I'm Managing Director and Principal of Kittleman's Chicago office, and we work nationwide. I'm personally delighted to be here with you all on this search. I have a history in public and not-for-profit management, first couple of decades in finance, lots of volunteer work. But in Illinois, I oversaw our state's division on alcoholism and substance abuse when I was our state's secretary for the Illinois Department of Human Services. I served in that capacity for 5 years. And most recently, right now, I think one of my volunteer roles is relevant. I serve as vice chair on a health conversion fund, which focuses on the health and well-being of people in metropolitan Chicago. And last thing that I'll mention at this morning is that I'm currently serving on a work group advising our state's recovery board. The working group that I'm serving on is one that advises on issues of equity and access. So all of these things make me very interested and very, very pleased and honored to be with you today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's always hard to find Michelle after an introduction like that. I'm Corey King. I'm the president and CEO of our firm. I have been with the firm for about a decade, and in that time, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of organizations that are similar to you in their makeup. We've worked with the Michigan Health Endowment Fund on their founding CEO search several years ago. Michelle and I recently worked for the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority on their executive director search. So I think we have a good understanding of the mechanisms through which you're operating, the kinds of environments you will be in, and we're looking forward to engaging in this process. So,
Can everybody hear Corey okay?
no?
A little bit.
All right, room does not carry. I'll do my best. So we have a brief agenda. We have 3 items that we want to share with you that generally will give you a sense of how the work has been going to date. What has the search committee of this board been working on, and how have we progressed, and where do we go from here? So the first thing I want to share is we have a document that we generally work with every search committee, which is called a search committee roles and responsibilities document. And I think Michelle is going to share that.
The host has disabled participant screen sharing. So I would either direct people to the iPad, the content, or Larry, Catherine, Connie, whoever's hosting, if it would be possible, please to enable participant screen sharing.
Yep, I think you have it now.
Perfect.
So while she's getting that up, I'll just share. So it's important, and this is an important governance step that every ad hoc search committee should go through, which is to essentially define the work of the committee itself. And so we do this with every search committee that we are engaged with on a CEO level search. And essentially, we walk through the document that's on screen right now, which essentially is a condensed version of the process document that was in our proposal. So it walks through, the responsibility of confidentiality that the search committee has moving through this process. It walks through the development of a position guide, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. It talks about advertising. It talks about our process for networking and recruiting and engaging candidates. Talks about how the committee will behave in terms of its process for engaging in interviews and moving through the process of ultimately making its recommendations to the governor. So this document is, for all intent and purposes, this is the charter of the ad hoc search committee of the board that is leading this process. And it really will be the guiding document for them as well as for you all in terms of understanding where the work is headed and how they will be working in a methodical way to get to this ultimate goal of your founding executive director. So the committee has had an opportunity to review this document. We've made a few edits for their request. This is now the approved document that the search committee will be utilizing as their roadmap for doing this search. As you can see, one of the key elements of this search, which is every search is different and every search is unique. One of the key elements of this search is that the committee will be recommending 3 finalist candidates to the board of directors at the end of this process. And that those finalists will be advanced to the governor for his introduction and his ultimate involvement in the hiring process. So that is a step that certainly will, require some logistical activities in terms of making sure that we're on target and in a space where we can have candidates in front of you for that recommendation. But certainly, I think we have experience with that and certainly in search as well as in Michelle's previous work, understand the complexity around that as well. So we'll be happy to take questions on this document once we move through the other items. Michelle is now going to walk us through 2 other aspects. One is the general timeframe and time milestones that the committee has been talking about in terms of the overall timeline of the search, as well as the position guide that we'll be using to engage candidates over the course of the next several weeks. Michelle?
Thanks, Corey. As I've spoken with members of the Executive Search Committee and others, one of the first questions that comes up is, what's the timeline for the search? I know that you all are very busy, very involved in establishing the foundation, establishing your processes, your procedures, thinking about in articles of incorporation, etc. And yet here we've met with the committee and have laid out a broad guideline for the timeline of the search. I came to Columbus on December 9th and held in-person meetings with quite a few members of the search committee. We followed up by phone with those that I wasn't able to meet with in person. And we, as of the very end of January, had put together a draft position guide. And we'd like to present that draft to you today. By mid-February, we anticipate going live with the search. We would like to launch the search. And that means that the opportunity will be live on the Kittleman website, perhaps on the One Ohio Recovery Foundation's website as well. There will be a live application portal, and that is the day that marks the beginning of our outreach, our networking, and recruitment on behalf of the One Ohio Recovery Foundation. Every other week following launch, we will be having an update call with the search committee to share with them how the networking, the recruiting is going, how the applications are flowing in, and to give them a sense of the candidates, the quality of candidates and the backgrounds of candidates that we're seeing. It's a very tight labor market. We don't want to shortcut the time that's spent in recruiting, and this will be beyond a regional search. This will be a nationwide search, and so we will have a candidate credentials review meeting in mid-April. That's a 2-hour meeting where Kittleman will present the strongest applicants for review by the Executive Search Committee. We will support the search committee by putting together a draft interview guide that they will then tailor make for their use. And we anticipate that first round interviews with the candidates will be in early May. Second round interviews would be in mid-May. And then by mid-May to early June, the search committee anticipates that they would be able to make a recommendation to you all, to the board, for your ratification and presentation of those 3 finalists to the governor. And the last step in this timeline would be working with the search committee, with the board and the Office of the Governor in preparing an offer letter. Okay, any questions on the timeline? Please know that that Larry, Kidd, that the chair will be keeping you all informed at a high level on how things are going. Of course, because of confidentiality, names and personally identifiable information won't be able to be shared until the tail end of this process. Okay, any questions before I move on? All right, let's go then, please, to the position guide. And I believe that you all have it on your meeting notes. But I'm going to, let's see, let me get to the correct document. Here we are. Share.
Hey, Michelle.
Yes? Is this the correct document?
Yes, it is. I think we're going to pause for one minute. If
Okay.
you would.
Yep.
There.
Unfortunately, we're gonna lose quorum in about 10 minutes. Senator McCauley has committee meetings. He's not gonna be able to make it. We do need to go in executive session very quickly to, so Donna, would you mind making a motion?
And I'll make a motion to go into executive session under section 8, personnel compensation.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Sure, we need a roll call.
Okay, go ahead.
Member Bog,
Yes.
member Amon,
Yes.
member Fix,
Yes.
member Handrew,
Yes.
member Old,
Yes.
member Mason,
Yes.
member Miller,
Yes.
member Simmons,
Yes.
member Kozlowski,
Yes.
member Worsbicky,
Yes.
member Cox,
Yes.
member Dodge,
Yes.
member Dreehouse,
Yes.
member Hohaddle,
Yes.
member Piccarelli,
Yes.
member Kidd,
Yes.
member Portman,
Yes.
member Boyson,
Yes,
member McCully.
Yes.
Do we have everybody back? I put it coming back.
Yeah, the motion. No. the chair. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we establish a pay range for the executive director between $250,000 and $300,000 annually.
Thank you, Mr. Fix. Would anybody like to have a second?
second,
Great. Do a roll call vote.
Member Bog,
Yes.
Director Amon,
Yes.
Director Fix.
Yes.
Director Handrew,
Abstain.
Director Old, Director Mason,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Simmons,
Yes.
Director Kozlowski,
Yes.
Director Worsbicky,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Dodge,
Yes.
Director Dreehouse,
Yes.
Director Hohaddle,
Yes.
Director Piccarelli,
Yes.
Director Kidd,
Yes.
Director Portman,
Yes.
Director Boyson,
yes,
Director McCully.
Yes.
Thank you. And Corey, we'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Sure thing. Then I'll turn it back over to Michelle, who is just going to walk us through the position description guide.
All right, so welcome back. We'd like to share the draft position guide with you, and it is up on the screen now. One Ohio Recovery Foundation. Let me show you how we arrived at this draft. I mentioned earlier that we've had discovery meetings, discovery calls with each member of the search committee, as well as a few other board members, as well as with the staff team. That information, together with the MOU and the website, was used. It was all compiled to draft this position guide. The position guide is a bit more than a job description. It is, in essence, a marketing piece, and we're going to add it'll be a little bit cleaner when we publish it, but it is a marketing piece to present the opportunity to the market of potential applicants for the position. It discusses One Ohio Recovery Foundation, informs people what it is, informs people about the mission, what the opportunity is, and concludes with the profile of the desired profile of the candidate we're seeking. This position guide starts with what the title is, who the executive director reports to, and the location. We have the mission here up front, and we begin with a quote by Governor DeWine acknowledging the importance of the role and of the foundation, and acknowledging that every corner of the state of Ohio has been impacted by this crisis. The next page describes the foundation. This is a paragraph that comes straight off of your website. But we share here the background because it is a really fascinating background, starting with 2017 and 2018. We talk about the initial filing of the lawsuits. And then in the next paragraph, we state and demonstrate the progress that was made when local governments representing more than 2/3 of the state's population signed on to this plan to jointly approach settlement negotiations and litigation. The third paragraph describes this historic settlement agreement with the 3 largest distributors of opioid. And in addition, the paragraph points to future possibilities that future settlements will add to the resources of the foundation. This second to last paragraph in the history notes that the MOU is in essence the guiding document and lays out the plan for use of the funds. And on the next page, we've included this chart for clarity in explaining how the lawsuit dollars, the settlement dollars, will be allocated between local governments, the foundation, and the state. And it also clarifies that that the foundation dollars may be used for grants, operations, as well as investments. And within grants, dollars may be used both for regional project grants, as well as statewide initiative grants. And then all of that is laid out in writing. We describe the foundation board here so people understand what the composition of the board, the size and composition and representation of the board. We then get to the position summary. And these bullet points up top really come from the MOU describing the responsibilities of the executive director, completing and implementing the strategic plan. Although by the time this executive director is hired, you may have an initial plan, but then implementation is part of the role. This executive director will work with you all to develop a 3, 5, and 10-year strategic plan and so forth. So this is from the MOU, but beyond that, through conversations with many of you, we've added other objectives that will add to and contribute to the fight against opioids and substance use disorder. Increasing access to services, bridging health equity gaps, advancing integrated care, expanding reputation as a thought leader on behalf of the foundation and the state, and increasing efficacy and cost effectiveness, and strengthening the health workforce and the nonprofit community. As we go forward, you all are probably hearing that workforce is huge consideration for the behavioral health industry right now and beyond. Here, this section talks about the foundation's grant making. You will recognize these bullet points that come from the MOU. And we described these things even above in the chart. We want to highlight that per the MOU, the foundation is for more than grant making. The dollars can be used to leverage other regional dollars, other local investments. The foundation can be used, and these funds can be used to disseminate information about best practices. And the dollars in the foundation can be used to ensure quality of services and adherence to the intent of the grants. And we just call that out here in the Beyond Grant Making section. And then last but not least, the position guide describes the qualities and qualifications of the person that we are seeking. And this describes the professional qualifications as well as personal qualities that we want to see in our applicant pool. There are 4 paragraphs that are an overview of the qualities or core competencies and core competencies that we seek. We are looking for someone, and I think you can see my cursor move. We're looking for someone who is passionate about the mission, someone who has a high level of empathy for the well-being of others, and a strong track record of collaboration. Second paragraph, we're looking for someone who has a lifelong dedication to improving the human condition. And third paragraph, not just the human condition of everyone in the world, but specifically the health and well-being of Ohio residents. We saw earlier, we know that this epidemic has touched people in all corners of the state. And this executive director needs to be someone who can work with a range of people from diverse demographics, diverse backgrounds, and diverse philosophies. That will be very important in building coalition and building a united front against the epidemic. And so here in this paragraph, we talk about success in collaborating with a wide variety of stakeholders and convening people with common interests and advancing an organization's goals in a collegial, transparent, and participatory manner, and in executing a strategic plan. The final page and a half puts a little bit more meat on the bones of these core competencies that we seek. Vision and strategic planning skills we describe here, strong external relations and communication skills. We know that we need someone who can bring people together and who can be the face of the organization and partner with you all. We need someone who can advance positive internal culture. The foundation will have staff of whatever size, and we need to make sure that the foundation is a place where people can participate fully, can bring their skill and their talent, and can do so in a sustainable and positive manner. Under business and financial acumen, we talk about somebody who needs, who has had experience managing a similar or larger budget or endowment, and someone with strong fiscal understanding. We do mention here that previous foundation experience and knowledge about policies, practices, and trends would be helpful. Here, we do talk about the track record that candidates must have of close working relationships with boards of directors, boards of trustees, or others. Because yours is a large board, a large and diverse board, we need someone who can span any regional differences, can span any philosophical differences, someone who can bring people together and build a team and build a partnership with all of you. In terms of formal qualifications, we are looking for someone who has executive experience in a top leadership experience, and a bachelor's degree is required. Formal education at the graduate level preferred, but not required. And you all discussed compensation previously, even before we started discussion of this position guide. So this will be filled in here. And the position guide does make it public, make it plain that 3 finalists will be forwarded on to Governor DeWine for formal selection. We have an equal employment opportunity clause here, and that we are looking for a diverse and dynamic team. And this highlighted section here will be where we insert the application link, the portal link, and that will be inserted when this goes live. And although the process will continue until a candidate is hired, for best consideration, we do ask people to submit their materials by April 15th. I'll stop this and we can take any and all questions that you might
Thank you,
have.
Michelle. Before we do, I just want to officially announce we no longer have quorum, so this is information we'll leave from here forward. Great.
Okay, thank you.
So any questions for Michelle or Corey? It's a easy crowd.
I think it's a lot of information to take in today for the board. This is the first time that they're seeing the information, so I think, you know, having the presentation and then being able to take time to formulate questions.
I have a question. It's just a very general question. I don't think you can see me over here.
Hi, I can.
Cincinnati. You know, what is your experience in filling roles like this? I'm asking both of you, but are there a lot of candidates out there? Is it an active market? Do you anticipate a flood of responses, or do you feel like you'll have to go out and sort of churn the waters? What's your anticipation for the next few months?
Corey, would you
like me to go
start?
first?
Yeah, please go first.
So, our firm is 95% of the search we do is for CEOs, and it's exclusive in the nonprofit space. So, yes, we're active. And it is a very, as all of you, I think, likely know from your own conversations, professionally and otherwise, it's a very tight market right now. And it's not just at the leadership level, the pain points are pretty much everywhere in the talent market. So our strategy is, has been the case with all searches, is proactive outreach. We will not be posting it up on ad sites and, kind of kicking our feet up and saying, let's see who responds. We have done our own research. We have our own large database and networks at the firm. And we'll be proactively reaching out to individuals in the state here in Ohio, in the broader Midwest, and obviously nationally, to invite people to this role. There's a lot of talent out there, but that talent is being pummeled with opportunities right now. So really talking about what the opportunity is here, what is it that you are trying to do? What will this founding executive have the ability to do in shaping the future of the fight against this epidemic? I think is going to be really important. And I think some of that's gotten into some of the other conversations we've had already today. But it is very much a one-to-one. Michelle will be leading the search. I will be partnering with her on it. But be us picking up the phone, having the conversations, networking, that's.
Thanks,
And I would
Corey.
also add. Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michelle.
No, what were you going to add?
I was just gonna add that I think, we really look at this process as a partnership. You will have access, obviously, to the position guide. You obviously know wonderful professionals in this state and elsewhere around the country who are doing good work and advancing this effort. And so we want and seek your networking on this, sharing the opportunity broadly of all the networks, so that the word gets out even further. So that is definitely a role we would ask of you to play. And I'm sure Larry will be in touch as we get closer to launch about links and that sort of.
So thank you, Corey. I agree with everything Corey has said regarding our outreach, regarding our partnership with you. We will be tapping our networks, researching networks, and tapping your networks as well. I would like to answer the question about the labor market, because it is so interesting. It's not, we don't view these as barriers, but I think that they're interesting to understand the context in which we are all operating, the context in which we are all partnering in this effort. It is a tight market. It's a very tight market, and that makes it challenging, but interesting. So a few things I'd like to share with you because they're interesting. Number one, the pandemic did change things. The pandemic changed the people's priorities, their expectations, and their demands. People are looking a lot more for hybrid work, even in cases sometimes for remote work. And so demands, expectations, and priorities have changed for individuals. You all read about the Great Resignation, people reprioritizing their lives. There was a wave of resignations. Many people who held off even through the pandemic have now resigned. And And there's a silent resignation from people who are saying, I'm not resigning, but I'm no longer going to give all of my life to my work. There's a new recognition of balance. And the last thing I'll say has to do with demographics. And I think that you all know this, but I find it so fascinating. We are at the tail end of the boomer generation. And so the tail end of the boomers are either retiring or considering retiring, looking to, well, how many more years am I going to be working full time? And so if we look at our demographics, the population as a, that big snake, the boa, the boomers were the large piano that the boa swallowed. And as that cow or piano moves through the boa, our workforce is, those retiring are being replaced by a narrower band of people at all levels of organizations, from CEOs to entry level. And so we are seeing smaller numbers overall on average. I think this is going to be a very attractive opportunity, and you all are making it so in many, many ways. So it's an attractive opportunity, but we are seeing, number one, fewer overall applicants for any given position, and we are seeing more applicants on a percentage basis for whom this may be a step up. We are seeing a greater percentage of people who may not have had CEO experience previously and are looking for that first CEO role. So just some interesting things to think about as we partner on this.
Any other questions? Yes.
If this is going to be a national search, is there going to be travel coverage to bring people in? Are we going to pay to relocate somebody to Ohio?
In our contract, we will pay for travel to have the individual come if we choose to do that. It is a national search, yes. We prefer Ohio, but we want to make sure we get the very best person. And in terms of relo, I suppose, I can't remember if that's in the contract or not, we can look at it. Michelle or Cordy, I believe we did put something in for relocation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would just add to that is, one of the great outcomes of COVID, not many great outcomes of COVID, but one of the great outcomes is everybody's now really comfortable in a virtual environment. Particularly the ability of committees to do work virtually. And I think that is another way that we can, through the course of the search, if we have people that are national candidates, we can engage them in a virtual environment first without having to, immediately jump into, travel and that sort of thing.
But with that said, we don't know if the governor would want to meet the individual person. I do believe face-to-face is more effective than virtual. There is a place for virtual, but we're talking about a very important position. So I would imagine there would be some. Yes, I'm sorry.
Is there any preference for Ohio talent? I mean, I appreciate that we're doing a national search, but we have a lot of good people here in the state. Right. Is there any preference for that, or how's that being addressed?
Yeah, as we mentioned, we would prefer to have an Ohioan, but we don't want to preclude the very best candidate that comes from a different state.
I have a quick question. Are we going to be able to get this application process, and that some of us may know someone and be able to hand this to them and say,
Yes.
if you're interested?
Yes. How would you like to do that, Corey? Michelle, do you want us to, have of course, the information is on here for the applicants, but do you want to give your information so they can contact you?
That's right. So when we actually go live with the search, it will be posted on our website through our application portal, and there'll be a link that is actually on this document that will direct people for applications. So once it's live, we'll make sure that you get that final version of it with the live link, and then that can be used for networking, to anybody that you feel like would be a good candidate.
Judy, we're also going to be putting that link on the website so we can direct them as we have been doing for the expert panel. We'll be able to direct them to the website to be able to apply through that way.
And Corey,
And-
Michelle, last we talked, the intent was to, go live next week, correct? On the 15th?
That is correct.
Yes, yes. And we would
Um,
hope that in addition to passing the position guide on to people,
It's,
that we'd ask you all to please send us names and addresses, names and contact information. So while, yes, we want them to know about us, we would like to know about individuals that we should reach out to as well. So you will have our email addresses and contact information, and we would really very much welcome names and contact information from you all and networks as well.
anything further? If you do have any additional questions for Kittleman, feel free to send them to me and I'll forward to them and get you the answers and send them out. All right.
The deadline for the applications, I believe you said was April
15.
April 15th. Is the deadline for that, and then Denise, they would be starting interviews shortly after that.
Thank you.
Michelle, Corey, do you have anything additional?
That was all on our agenda.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it and appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Take care. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
And with that, we'll go directly into the financial report. Jim, do you want to?
Sure, thank you, Larry. So in the packet, there are two documents for your consideration. I'll briefly discuss. The first is the financial, right? I think this is kind of be the format that we'll stick to, and depending upon the CPA, we may alter it a little bit, but this is the budget, the expenses that you guys passed in January. And then at the bottom of the page, there is a running kind of cash balance, so you can see where we stand from a cash perspective as of the end of the month. We don't voting on anything, you want to get that on. So, any discussion questions on that document? The other document is a really brief comparison of potential grant software. While the grant making committee is working on the policy, we've been working on what are all the possible options. Most of these options came from the board. I think somebody recommended Salesforce and Fondant, and so we did a brief comparison of what those things might look like. There's some links there if you want to go see, how it might work, and a brief comparison, and so that we can be somewhat up and running when the grants committee says, here's how we want to do things. Right? Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions, comments? Yeah.
I am not familiar with two of the three. I can say that the Department of Development uses Salesforce for most of their programs. And from an applicant's standpoint, it's extremely easy to use. And the state's able to get the reporting and the financial information that they need out of it. But it is very user-friendly.
Anybody has recommendations, you can send them to me. We'll add them to the list. These are really three different approaches. Salesforce is the big guy, right? Right. Fondant is used by many middle-sized foundations, and EOGO is like an all-in-one type of package. Right? It's everything in there, accounting and everything. I think it's used by over 200 foundations across the country. It was a recommendation of the grants contractor.
But the reality is, we can't make a decision until the grant making finalizes.
Right, because you want the best fit. The best fit will depend upon
Policy.
the policy of those requirements that you absolutely want to have.
A question on that.
Yeah.
Just one thing to consider, I think, when vetting out these firms is the level of security that they kind of have around their software. Our multiple recorders offices throughout the state just went through a similar issue, so just make sure you probably vetting that considerably when looking at all these firms.
Yeah,
Consider that.
I'm not sure we'll put that in the RFP. Also having like a SOC 1 and a SOC 2.
Yeah.
And just one order, is quorum back since I think another board member appeared?
I'm sorry.
Is there a quorum?
There is no quorum.
There is no quorum. We have to, in order to meet, no, in order to meet quorum, there has to be one from each class.
Right.
And we do not have anyone from the legislative class.
And so the last update is the RFP for the accounting firm. The audit and finance committee narrowed that down from 5 to submit proposals to 2. We went back to the 2 and asked for additional information. They have responded to that additional information, and I hope they can do that today. If we have a chance to meet, we can go through that process and inspect it.
Yeah, I think we had, when we met, a couple weeks ago, we had a good discussion about all 5 firms. And as Jim indicated, we did narrow it down to, 2 firms, requested some additional information, and then, after today's meeting, we'll be, hopefully deciding which one to proceed with. I think either would be a good firm. One we're already working with, so we do know, their work product.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Jim? Thanks, Jim. Jeanette, we didn't have the finance committee on here, but do you have anything else that you would like to add as a chair of the finance committee?
None of these.
Great, thank you. And we'll go right into the interim directors, executive director's report. Catherine?
You have that on your iPad in your packet. I am excited to announce that the 501c3 application has been submitted as of February 1st. So we are excited about that. Thank you to all who helped with that process. I am glad to see it finally filed, and we will keep you posted as we move through the process for that. The expert panel application and policy have been announced. The deadline is February 17th. I'm asking that you share that information with your regions and have them send it out to their member stakeholders. We are continuing to gather information for the region and the region board. So I will be reaching out to those who have sent those. We are trying to get all the contact information compiled and who holds the seats as far as whether there's a chair, vice chair, or if you've done president, vice president, how you made up your region. So we will be working still to get all that done. I am working to get the strategic planning committee. We had a tentative date, but that only worked for 2 of us. So we will be looking at available dates in the near future. As you can see, I was working with Jim on the grant software that was in your packet. The grant, I had to adjust the timeline for the grant software. It did not change the timeline at this point. If there are any other delays with the grant policy making, there will be delays which will shift the entire timeline later. And I know that's probably not something you want to hear, but I felt it was important that you know that as we move through this, that policy and that process is the most critical piece in order for us to receive dollars from the settlement, and then to turn it around and get it back into the programming, the projects, to the regions, to the statewide, to investment, to operations. This is the process that is key to getting finished and getting us moving forward to a point that funds can be distributed. Yes.
Captain, with the addition of the consultant to our grant making committee, can we not expect a greater sense of urgency moving forward with that as people are waiting for some movement in this?
So the grant committee met approximately 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. As far as I am aware, the grant committee does not have another meeting set. At this time, they are working on that. Claudia is working on the policy that Benish had started a policy outline. I then started working on that policy outline and started filling it in and then gave that to Claudia. Claudia's gone through some of that. That's what was presented. There's still probably 60 to 70% of that policy that still needs to be completed. So I'm just letting the board know that at this point, I don't see how we can have a draft and an approval by the March meeting.
And Keith, to answer your question more directly, we're gonna have a conversation with Claudia. We need to get this moving a lot faster. And for those in the grant committee committee, we need to start moving faster because we won't even get funds until we get the grant policy put together, as we should, because frankly, that's when the clock starts ticking. So we'll have those conversations with Claudia and we'll get it moving along.
I'd be glad to be part of that if you need another body.
We would appreciate that. Thank you.
So moving back through, also with, in my report, the Attorney General has launched a training academy for nonprofit board governance. I watched one of the webinars that was specifically on board governance for nonprofits. I did include the website, but you can obviously go right to the Attorney General's website. They have added more nonprofit board training webinars. They're short, they can be viewed at your leisure on your own time, but I do encourage the board members to actually look at those trainings and go from there. Probably the most exciting thing today for me is the Pocket MOU. So we are excited. I'm very thankful to Connie for making Rachel and my idea actually come to life and be able to move around. And I hope that this makes it easier for the board members and the regional board members to be able to reference and understand the MOU that guides this foundation. I continue to have weekly meetings with Kevin and Connie. We cover the website, social media, and communications. Connie and I are continuing with our communication strategic plan. In January, we met with the Ohio Hospital Association, NAMI, Ohio Associations of County Behavioral Health Authorities, the Ohio Citizens Advocates for Addiction Recovery, and the Health Policy Institute of Ohio. I have also met with Region 14, Region 15, Region 19, Region 17, or Region 7. Boy, Dwayne, I am never going to get your region right. So I apologize for that. Again, I called him Region 6 at the meeting I was at for the entire thing. So
Until we found out we had more percentage and then we changed it.
they were okay with it until they found out that their percentage was higher. So so met with Region 7 this week. I am tentatively scheduled for Region 18. February 15th. I'm waiting to see if there is a virtual option. I cannot travel that day. So, and Region 12, asked me to attend a meeting as well. I am unable to travel that day due to other commitments that I've already committed to prior to these meetings coming up. We have, Connie and I have upcoming meetings for February. We have the Ohio Judicial Conference meeting today, later today. Tomorrow, we will be meeting with the Ohio Association of Community Health Centers, the multi-ethnic advocates for cultural competence, and the Ohio Mayor's Alliance. And in April, I'm scheduled for the Mayor's Partnership for Progress. So we continue to reach out to the stakeholders. Many of them aren't aware of us or how things are being done. So a lot of it is just basic education at this point. Meeting with them, letting them know how we were formed. Connie has a great PowerPoint that she put together that goes through from start to finish on the organization. That was part of your strategic stakeholders plan that you received a while back ago. So we continue with that, and at the at one of our stakeholder meetings, with the Ohio Association of County Behavioral Health Authorities, I've been asked to be a keynote speaker for the opiate and other drugs conference this summer for One Ohio. Any questions on my report?
Catherine, did you receive an invitation for Region 11's rescheduled meeting?
No, I have not.
Okay, I apologize for that.
That's okay.
That went out on Monday and we are meeting on the 17th. There is a virtual option available, so I'll make sure that you get that notice.
Okay, the 17th.
I think it's
a Friday. You guys meet on Fridays, don't you? Okay, yeah, that's fine. I can
it's at
attend that.
10 o'clock.
Okay, if you can just send me that and then we'll get that added.
Any other questions for Catherine? I'd like to commend her. She really has hit the pavement. Her and Connie have done the road shows. And she's also done several virtuals, and it really has made a big difference. You know, a lot of the regions we're not completely familiar with, and it's not easy. This is really actually pretty complicated. But explaining, you know, what it is, the importance and the intent, really is eye-opening for a lot of these folks. And, you know, I appreciate her willingness and drive for Connie to do that. So thank you. And so nothing further. I'd like to go off track a little bit, and Dan Fauci's here. Dan, you mind? He's with the Attorney General's office and actually heads up some of the grant making, correct? Would you mind giving us a 2-minute brief of some of the programs that are available for the AG's office on what Catherine was describing?
Sure. So hi, I'm Dan Fauci. I'm the section chief of the Fair Law section. We did just roll out in January what we're calling Charitable University. This is an online training platform for nonprofit organizations. Has 4 sort of course areas that we've gone through. So you can learn about board governance, financial controls, compliance with government requirements, and then fundraising. So the videos are 15 minutes to 25 minutes, somewhere in that range each. We have a series after you've completed 4, you actually get a certificate that says congratulations, you graduated charitable youth. We are looking at opportunities to promote this more broadly. We started talking to some community foundations about requiring this for their grantees, and also among state agencies, sort of having it as a precondition for state money. That way, that way folks have gone through education. I will say, this is based on our understanding that most of the charitable organizations in the state, really more than half, have assets or income of less than $25,000 a year. And so having the kind of, having an attorney on board, having a CPA on board is actually a luxury for a lot of these organizations. So this was our attempt to sort of provide some resources for the community. So that's what's out there. If any of you are, have organizations that benefit from it or would like to do it independently, it's a great thing.
Thank you very much. Tom is not here today, but in his absence, Catherine, if you can talk a little bit about the grant committee. There's not much more to report. But
There isn't much more to report, other than what I've already discussed, that they had a meeting. We have several of the members, that were present on that call, so if there's anything that you would like to mention. No, okay, all right, well, Tom hopefully will be reaching out soon to set up more meetings with the grant committee, so we can move that along. And then just go ahead.
So before we go into the grant making discussion, which, you know, we had discussed, this is part 1 of 2. The idea is to have open discussion and, you know, talking it through with some people. You know, there will probably be some brainstorming, just to talk about the process. It may look a little haphazard and a little chaotic, but the idea is to flush out ideas and then think about it for a month and then come back in March and kind of finalize some things with the help of the grant making committee. So this is truly set up for open discussion and really vetting different ideas and including, you know, how we allocate funds between the regions and operations in the state, and talk about different points of view that we each have. But before we do that, and this was intended to go from 12 to 12:30. Obviously, it's a little earlier, and that's where we'll have the opportunity to talk longer. And if anybody needs to leave or not, we don't have quorum anyway. It's more for discussion purposes. But I do want to announce, if you do leave, our next meeting will be at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, which is, I don't remember the address, but it's directly across from the State House. It'll be on the second Wednesday at 10:30. Which will be March 8th for the next meeting, and then subsequently it will continue to be at the Chamber's offices. Catherine and I went there today. Of course, you may or may not be aware, but I've been involved with the Chamber for years. They have a wonderful facility. The sound system is incredible, so we won't have any issues. And we have rooms that we can break out if we need to do that. So I'm excited about it. As you saw, we lost quorum pretty quickly today. We need to get quorum in each class. If we don't, we can't make any decisions. We can talk about it. But being across the street from the State House will help facilitate, and they can stay longer to our meetings. Typically, Evan is here for a longer period of time. Today, he just couldn't make it. So hopefully we don't run into this issue again. But with that, we'll just go right into the grant making. And Catherine, if you want to kick that off.
Okay.
Discussion.
So we need to have the conversation of the allocation of the settlement dollars. So as our payments come in, we have 90 days from the date of payment to decide how those dollars will be divided. So, or allocated. So, you have 4 categories that we need to look at. Operations, investment, region, state. Those are your 4 categories. Obviously, we need to take dollars for operations. We are required to invest dollars. And then we have our statewide and regional projects. So over the weekend, because I have nothing else to do but to create data documents for you guys. I don't have a whiteboard in here. Okay, I'm going to stand if that's okay. So what I did was I took and this is a scenario, this is hypothetical. This has just using figures, sitting in my living room. This is not what the payment's going to be. So please remember that. This is hypothetical scenario for you to get an idea of how breakdowns will look. So I based it on 45.
Mike, do we have a way to do that?
Can you send that?
Like, go ahead.
Okay. So we based it on $45 million. And then I started to think about, and I used round percentages. I didn't get very specific. So the first thing I looked at was operations and what we would probably need. Obviously, there's going to be an executive director, there's going to be a CFO, there's going to be additional staff beyond that. So I was looking at, and hopefully we'll have, you know, we have a residence now, but we'll have a more permanent residence as well. So there's cost of that. But for the general cost of operations, I looked at 10%. Now that might be a little high, might be a little low. Jim just heard this number today. He didn't cringe too badly, so I might be in the general area. I then went with a 5% for investment, 75% for the regions, and 10% statewide. So using that scenario, the monies that would be going back to the region, we would look at the, you have that, I don't want to read through each.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Catherine, not at this moment, but just before we leave, and I know it's hard to explain, but the two different groups of funding allocations based with one with the Summit and Cuyahoga in and out. That if someone could, before we leave, just give us a cliff note explanation of that, it'd be helpful. The people are asking us that, and I know you tried to explain to me before, but maybe.
Rachel, while I'm doing this, can you explain you haven't spoke today.
I can try. So the reason that was put in there is because the counties of Summit and Cuyahoga, the county government settled already with the defendants before the One Ohio MOU and the national distributor settlement, national government settlement. They cannot like settle twice with the same people. That's like, they can't do that. So when we're saying Cuyahoga and Summit, we're saying the county governments of those two counties, not all the entities within those county borders. It's extremely confusing because we all, like, I work with data, right? So like, I think of it in terms of counties, but all those political subdivisions, all those nonprofits, all those people doing work on the ground in the state in those counties are still eligible for dollars. The county governments themselves cannot take more money from from the settlement because they already got money from the settlement. So those percentages subtract out what Cuyahoga and Summit County government would have received from. Let me back up for a second. Those percentages are calculated by adding up each of the political subdivisions within those regions' geographical boundaries, county, cities, townships, villages. Each subdivision has a percentage allotted to it through Exhibit B of the MOU. You add all of those up to get the regional totals. Without Summit and Cuyahoga, the Summit County government and the Cuyahoga County governments were separated out and redistributed among all of the other governments. Does that make sense?
So let me ask you, just quick and dirty, if our region asks us what we're getting, we probably And I know nothing in stone, we should talk about the amount without,
Yes,
okay.
yes, because for the ones that we have right now, distributor and Johnson and Jansen, they were part of Bellwether.
Okay.
So, yes,
All right, thank you.
I help.
So page 52 is what we're using. Okay.
So Rachel, can you speak to this, which entities were settled with Summit and Cuyahoga and which were not?
So
That's a
my-
different pot too. isn't it?
My understanding, are you talking about which lawsuit, like?
Yes.
Yeah, so my understanding is the three big distributors, so that's the big one that got done in 18 years.
Mhm.
My understanding is that they settled with all three of those companies.
Okay.
In the Bellwether.
Okay.
As well as Johnson & Johnson. I'm gonna have to. I need to figure out what's going on with the retail pharmacy stuff that's happening now. Obviously, we've had another Bellwether settlement. So there might end up.
Yeah,
being
so we
another
need to know what fell into that.
So like, you might, just to make things worse, you might have a third column that ends up on here called regional allocation without Lake and Trumbull. Settlement, because you can't, so it's extremely confusing. I know there are attorneys in this room that I'm not an attorney, I just talk to them. So yeah, that everything that has happened so far that is official on the book that you would get money for so far is gonna be this column on page 52.
That's helpful.
Okay, great. So we're gonna put this document up again. These are my notes. It is a scenario. It is not approved by this board. This is the first time you're seeing it. I'm not requesting that you approve anything of this nature. It's just to start the discussion. So we would be based at 75% for the regions. That would be $33,750,000. As you can see, or maybe not. Can we
tried to make the sheet larger.
Yeah.
Can we make just this section larger, I guess, would be?
And we can't emphasize enough, this is only for discussion purposes, and only example, because we don't know if it's 45 million. And we don't know what the allocations, that's something the board has to approve, but it's a scenario to just for discussion.
Yes, so this is what a 75% on a 45 million would look like. We'd be at 33,750,000, and I'll just take my region. So I'm region 13. And our percentage is 4.84072. We would get 1.6 million for a 4-county region. So a lot of the discussion with me has been how much money are we gonna get, which we can't determine that at this point until our policies are in place and we are ready to accept dollars from the Attorney General for our settlement. We don't know if we're getting payments 1 and 2 together, if they'll be separate. We also have the J&J settlement to factor into that, payments 1 and 2. So there's 4 payments that are there. So again, these are just numbers that I use to work with. And by the looks on everybody's face, they're shocked.
So if I may just speak to this, in Catherine's region, under this scenario, and again, this is not the way it would be, but just for sake of discussion, they get 1.6 million. And let's say the region decided to divide that equally among the counties, that's $400,000. So, and thank you for those that wrote in on the questions, the 4 or 5 of you, and really appreciate that. You guys took the time. A lot of them did talk about, let's just allocate as much as we possibly can in the region. But our point of this is, if you take $400,000 per county, you're not gonna have nearly the impact, and for your budget, it's probably gonna be, we did the scenario in the executives meeting earlier, and for Keith, it was less than 10% in a scenario like this. Then you're gonna have less impact than you are on a regional, if you combine with regions and pool of monies, or a statewide project, which will touch every single corner of the state. So, for example, I'm in Appalachia. I think we probably have one of the lowest when
What region are you?
and frankly, I'm not sure. off the top of my head.
Region 10, who looked at the pocket MOU? So Larry, you're at 2.7, so 940,000.
So 900, let's say $1 million. And I think we have 7 counties. Is that correct? So, do the math. We are one of the hardest hit opiate areas in the entire country. As a matter of fact, in 2010, I formed a drug task force because we were number 2 in prescriptions in the whole state for opiates. Cited was 1. Now, we don't have the population of a Cuyahoga, but frankly, that money is not going to go nearly as far as you wanted to, because we're talking about a little over what, I'm just doing the math in my head, $100 and some thousand. If you, again, it's up to the regions, but if you divide that equally among the counties. So, what we wanted to do is kind of vet this, and we were encouraging open discussion. We feel that you probably could get much more impact if we funnel some of the monies to statewide projects. Because again, you're affecting the entire state. Let's do something that is completely transforming, and something that will really make a difference on the opiate addiction problem. And look at something that has never been done with before. We got a lot of money here. In this scenario, it's 45 million. But if you look at over time, it's going to probably be substantially more if we invest it properly. We'll even have more to give out and last longer than 18 years. So anyway, just consider it, and then let's discuss it and talk about the pros and cons.
I think when you're going back to your regions, the conversation that needs to be held regionally is, how are you going to do these monies? So we have some regions that have divided equally their share. We have some regions that have gone through and allocated for each county how they came to this allocation to begin with. So they went through the county, the villages, the townships, the cities, and added that percentage up, and that's how they're allocating it. We have other regions that are discussing doing projects in phases across counties. So each year doing a different county. We have counties that have been talking about picking one centralized regional project and focusing on that would service all of the communities. So the regions have a lot of flexibility in how you develop, but I wanted to show the impact on that. So Jeff, I know you've had a question.
Yeah, so if you could scroll up just a little bit, using a percentage for overhead, right? You've got 10% in there, which may or may not make sense if the number is 45 million. I think ultimately what this board will do is say it's going to cost us $2 million a year to run this foundation, right? And so that's our number, not a percentage, right? So, I mean, because if that number instead of 45 million was 100 million, it would cost us 10 million to run.
Correct.
Right. So I think you plug a static number in there, and then the remainder you can split up however you see fit. Does the MOU require us to make an investment?
Yes.
And it requires a 5% or it requires some investment?
It requires investment, and it requires us to hire an advisor.
Okay. So I understand the point of if it's $45 million and if you provide 75% to the regions, and if you break it down in every region that, for region 18, I think it's $1.5 million, right? And in 7 counties that you're right, that's not going to go a great long way. But I think you know, you could use that same logic and say that $33 million isn't gonna go a long way in the state, right? It's all numbers. To me, the difference is, you know, what Larry's region is faced with versus what Cuyahoga County is faced with, or what we may be faced with in our region. They're sometimes pretty different challenges. And so a statewide program may be helpful, and we have $4.5 million set aside to do something. But I really believe that the regions kind of know what they need and can make really good decisions. Now, over time, that may change, and we may try it one way in year one and see how it works, and then, you know, adjust it in year 2, 3, 4, whatever. But there's so much appetite and, you know, kind of urgency. I'm hearing it from my region. I'm sure most folks are. There's an urgency to say, okay, we have some things that we want to do. When can we get our hands on the money, right? So
you brought something up that I'd just like to address in your narrative that you sent out, which was wonderful, because you talked about cocaine and crack in the 80s, I think it was the 80s, 90s you were referred to, and how we just have seen a decline. And while cocaine and crack is not the same as heroin, we understand that there's different. We've seen a huge decline. I attribute some of that to the education. If you remember that Brain on Drugs commercial, and a statewide, and I'm just throwing out ideas, this is just broken discussion, a campaign on a state level could have a major impact, and $4.5 million is going to buy a whole lot of advertising. But you had mentioned that in your discussion, and I do believe that, you know, whatever was done, of course, there were a lot of factors that went into the reduction of cocaine, and frankly, the federal government put a lot of attention on it, and it made a huge difference. But I think that was one of them, and that would be something that we could do statewide. And anyway, thank you for your
Thank you. Glenn?
I'm sorry, Catherine. Whatever number we want to call it, was that per year or is this?
That's just one year.
1 year.
One payment. Just a number. Static.
Yeah, because
throw it in there.
Yeah, one of the issues running into Region 16 is the volunteers are questioning, are we going to get enough money in a region to spend the time to do all this?
And see, that breaks my heart, because at the end of the day, those dollars are meant to save lives. And if the region isn't seeing value in that, that's concerning.
But also on the other hand, if, you know, it figures out for our region $60,000 a county, and it's been talked about, our money would be better in the state. I think we would receive more benefit and affect more people's lives. Because it's good, some is going to happen, however.
If there's anything that I can do with your region to help that regional board understand the importance of these dollars and the work that needs to be done, I'm more than happy to speak to them.
Appreciate
Catherine?
Yes, Dr. Rosen.
Let me give an example, if I can, that is pertinent to past history. We got rid of spina bifida largely by putting folate in bread. Let us just say that we find something that we could put in bread or pasta, if you will, or bread products that stops opiate craving. There's no reason that couldn't be a statewide grant that, for example, was tested in regions 12 and 16. So I think the potential of having some of this for statewide grants and for prevention in testing would be a tremendous benefit to society. So I'm speaking for, I think your ability, the way you define that 10, 10, and 5, I think is incredibly brilliant.
Did you hear that, Casey?
I heard that.
Just want you to take that back to JP too.
Yeah,
so.
I think Janet's
Yes,
been.
So, and I appreciate, all the work that you've done on this, Catherine, and I'm just speaking from Region 11's standpoint. A lot, and Larry, I appreciate your comments too about, doing something transformational, like if we had an additive to put into pasta or bread or whatever, I mean, that would be wonderful. But one of the things that I think is a real need for our region is getting folks into treatment. And waiting lists are incredibly long. I've heard horror stories of people in Belmont County having to go all the way up to Youngstown for treatment. I've heard from emergency responders that if they revive someone and they want to go into treatment, there is no place for them to go locally. And the waiting lists are incredibly large. So I guess my suggestion would be, maybe for the first year or two, that more of the monies go towards the region. And then as in years, maybe 3, 4, 5, and 6, as we see what's working and maybe there is the white bread additive, then we can look at changing the ratio. But I think each region's needs are a little bit different. And, my region is very rural as well. And again, from what I'm hearing, treatment is really so critical for the region and having those opportunities for folks and having the opportunities locally.
Jeanette, I'm glad you brought that up because I had a conversation with the judge. Unfortunately, he could not be here today. But one of the ideas that he has suggested was not only is there a problem with lack of facilities, there's lack of labor. And that is definitely a statewide, it's a national problem, quite frankly, but he suggested maybe working something with loan forgiveness to encourage people to go into the field of not only addiction, but mental health. So that's something else to consider. And you're right, maybe it's not year 1 or year 2, but we're looking at a long play here, guys. It is an 18-year funded project. So we need to look globally. And again, I think we're all here for the right reasons. We want to make the biggest impact we possibly can to frankly eradicate the opiate addiction.
Yeah, and I'm almost thinking, I almost view this, I mean, we're in an emergency situation right now. And so if you take the first aid analogy, I mean, the first step is to make sure the patient's breathing and the bleeding is stopped. And that's almost what I think we need to be focused on for the first year at least, maybe even the second year. And then we can look more globally and change the ratios.
Let me say, I don't know that operations is a function of percentages. Because whether we got 30 million or 50 million, that number should still be a flat fee.
And that's what,
So I think of probably using 2 million would still be on the high side since the budget we have in the agenda shows like a 1.2 million annual. And there's some stuff that is higher in there because we're using contract labor versus in-house. So I know the people in my region, and that includes Monroe County. Monroe County is so remote from Columbus, Cleveland, any of the markets that you're talking about. When I was a utility regulator, they consider themselves not even a part of Ohio. So they would get no benefit in Monroe County from statewide program, and they all wanted to go into the regions because it really is a difference between getting around $1 million versus getting $760,000. If we trend some of those out, and frankly, going back to what Jeanette said about investments, we'll have investment income off of interest earned. But again, going back, we're going to get a second allocation of funds, we hope within a few months of our first. Well, that's when I think we start talking about maybe putting money aside for investments. clearly not the first tranche, because we've got to get people up and running, and just like our costs are unusually high for a startup, the regions we're dealing with are going to have some upfront cost, again, because it's going to be year one of something or an extension of program. But I have 8 very rural counties that I want to help with.
Wayne?
And I just want to say, you know, I agree with the scenario. The regions are hurting. We need the money. I think, you know, put a little dollar amount, little percentage on the stage. Let's see what the trends are. We have 18 years. It's a long game. We have 18 years. If we see trends that something, so maybe regions can work together. But initially, the regions really need this money. They really do. And for us, you know, I knew up at ours, we're talking about looking where the needs are, trying to reach out to grassroots groups. That a little bit of money to a grassroots group is huge. Nice thing about this money is some flexibility. All this ARPA money that's been thrown out, we were just saying, it's in buckets. We can't even figure out how to use the buckets. This is a lifetime opportunity. We got to get that money out. This is the first year. Next year might be different, but regions are hurting bad. We got to get this out to them. I like your scenario.
Denise leverage that on mine.
Denise,
And we could leverage, yeah.
I appreciate following you. So I'm from Region 2, which is Hamilton County, Cincinnati area. So I too worry about peeling away too much money from the regions. I think the idea of the settlement, and I was there, with the governor and the AG, and in the very beginning of all of this, when we were all suing, and the idea of splitting this into different buckets was to say the regions get the largest bucket because we're the ones that are on the ground, that understand the needs, that know how to invest this money to save lives and get people into long-term recovery. And then there, you know, was the state share that was pulled out that was separate, and that was all very intentional. But I will tell you from my understanding from the very beginning, as a member of this committee, was that the money that we're talking about with this foundation was to go to the regions. We've got 19 regions, and we, as you say, we've still got an emergency down in every single one of our regions. And so, as I'm thankful listening to some of you that Region 2 is one county, and so it does make it easier for us to coalesce around something as opposed to different counties. But that said, we have done a lot of work in Region 2 with I've got a 26-member board of doctors and elected officials and people with lived experience and family members. There are many ideas related to criminal justice and housing and addiction and treatment. So the money we get, we could use 100 times the money that we're being allocated. But, you know, the idea is that we will make good use of these funds. And we've got the experts sitting at the table that know how to push that money out. And it's got to be an agreement amongst all of us. So my worry about the statewide allocation is that you're just peeling away from the regions, and it gives us less resource to do what we intended to do as a region. I am intrigued by the idea of seeing how it goes the first time out. As you say, you know, this is a build. It's not like it's one-time money and then that's the end of it, because it's an 18-year build. But I'm intrigued by the idea of seeing how it goes, seeing what the regions come up with, and then trying to figure out, is there a statewide initiative? If it's in something in PASTA, I think that's something we should think about, right? But the whole reason of the 19 districts was because we're so distinct and so different from one another, and we know our regions better than anybody else. And so sometimes a statewide initiative is not going to be as impactful to some regions as others, and that's why it's been set up as it has. I've got one question though. As I looked at the MOU, and I know that from our line, we can either do local, regional allocations and statewide allocations. My question is, from the state line, the state's got the 15%, and I heard that money talked about in terms of attorney's fees. But my read of the MOU is that attorney's fees can be used from that line, but statewide projects can also come out of that line. And so I'm wondering if that conversation has been had with the governor and the AG. It seems to me most appropriate to be in that statewide foundation percentage if we are going to start to think about.
So the 15% is government. It is not foundation dollars. That 15% stays at the government level.
Right, but the question is, can it be used on statewide programs?
But that's up.
That would be up to that,
Well, no, I
she's
understand that.
asking for the conversation to be had.
Yeah,
But
right. And I've had a conversation with the Attorney General Yost about some of the monies, and I can't speak to the specifics because he didn't have them, or he didn't give them to me, but his intent is to give some money back. But I don't know what that looks like.
Well,
And I don't know if he does either at this point.
so I think there's some potential with that 15%. And because I've heard him saying that Yost has said, well, maybe there are some great ideas that could be statewide programs, and it can come out of that as well, at that 15%. So I think I just want to put that on the table as something we can contemplate. We have in those conversations.
And we can, but you have to remember there is an allocation that still has to come out of the 55% for statewide. There will have to be monies, whether we partner with the state government or with other entities. I've had conversations this morning with other foundations that potentially are doing statewide campaigns, and would that be something that we would be interested in partnering and coming on board with to save those dollars for both entities? So there's ways that we can still do statewide. It also with the regions, if you look at your county allocations that were received, those dollars can also be paired with your regional projects. That's another alternative. Reaching out to your county government and your local municipalities. There's ways to get creative. As you said, Denise, bringing up the 15%. There's ways to get creative in garnering more than just what the settlement.
Right, and we're doing that with the direct allocations, but my understanding again of the MOU is that from this percentage may be used for statewide.
Yes,
It's not a
it
shall.
clearly
be used
says
for
may.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a may, not a shall. So we don't have an obligation to do statewide projects from this fund. We can, but we don't have to.
I would like to second, I believe Denise, it's your name. Same from my region, I think we want to see the funds coming to the region, very rural community. I'm not sure if any statewide projects will impact us so much. We have counties that have no treatment facilities whatsoever. So if I go back and tell them, hey, we're gonna do some advertisement or ads, not gonna really be received well. I do want to see the funds go to the regions. I also would like to make a comment to be cautioned about, especially this rural region, if we start them with a healthy startup cost, I think we gotta be careful for sustainability. If we want to cut the percentage significantly year 2 or 3, they might struggle to sustain those programs. And one more comment when it comes to public agencies, I know, for example, Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, they might have statewide projects or coming with, within the budget. So we might want to coordinate, if it is for us to allocate a percentage to statewide, we definitely want to collaborate with other statewide agencies and see what's already there so we don't duplicate.
Good point.
So I think part of the challenge, at least that I'm having, is, when I think about regional projects, I know in my region, some of the ideas that are already being floated out and can kind of wrap my brain around what those might be. When you talk about statewide projects, it's really a lot more esoteric, right? It's an advertising campaign or pasta or, it's hard to consider saying, yes, we should put X amount of money into a statewide program that we really don't know what that is. Whereas on a regional level, I think all of us have a pretty good idea of at least a couple of projects that we want to do out of the gate. And that's why I think the idea of, saying the first 2 years, we're going to put as much as we can back to the regions while we develop these statewide ideas. And then, perhaps as we get into year 2 and year 3, start considering those bigger statewide projects that we can all understand better, right? Because right now it's really just kind of out there in the weekend.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I'm like Denise, one county, Montgomery County, and thank you. In 2017, I think we were nationally known as the opiate overdose capital, I think, of the world. I know we had national TV coming out of, it was awful. we are desperate for this money because we're short-staffed, we need nurses, we need, you know, help with addicts. We had 2 deaths just last week in the jail from overdose deaths. I mean, we have a huge list of our needs, so. That's mine.
So a number of years ago, Bob Sprague was in the House or Senate. He had proposed that all mental health and recovery board regions have a full continuum of care, or at least access to it. It was an unfunded mandate, so folks like Dwayne and Mirshu and Greta didn't have the dollars to be able to do that. It would have helped had those dollars been available so that in Belmont County, there would be the appropriate level of care and things like that. Okay. In Stark County, one of the things that we did is we took 5, 6, 7 years ago and took some what was called $507 and brought 7 counties together and built a regional center for opiate recovery, thinking we'd have about 450 unduplicated referrals the first year, and we had 1,100. So what do you think happened? So that lasted for a few years, and then because everybody saw that it was a good idea, other people started to duplicate that. What worries me is that during that period of time, we didn't necessarily see a decrease in the number of overdose deaths. What we saw is we saw more treatment providers competing for more workforce and more dilution of stuff. So if we do a statewide project, we're just going to have more providers diluting the number of folks we have. So Jeff's talked about prevention. Dr. Roizen's talked about research. We've talked about beds. We really truly have to think what our regions need, because I agree, each region is its own individual thing. But at the same time, the state has a workforce grant that's $87 million that Director Chris put out there. So while we're looking for workforce, there's something already out there that we need to know a little bit more about. Board areas have, you guys have your own special dollars as well. So we truly have to look and see how we can braid dollars within our regions and in our communities. And it's going to make for some partnerships that, to be honest, there are some agencies in rural communities, because of cultural ego, they're not going to want to spread their money around. Heck, it's hard enough for them to have another organization. So if my organization I used to work for in Stark County went to Columbiana County and said, hey, Family Recovery Center, and that, how would you like to join forces? Like, nope, we got this, we can do this ourselves. So some of the conversations that need to take place is how difficult it is for people to staff their organizations. Because guys, I'm telling you, the cost of doing business continues to go up and the reimbursement rate isn't going anywhere. So until we fix this whole thing, and again, a little bit of money is going to help over the next 18, 25, whatever years. Okay? But we're dealing with a drug, unlike cocaine, that it has built into its chemistry withdrawal and tolerance. And as a recovering opiate person, okay, I can remember not having any opiates and thinking to myself, you know what, if I just had one, I would feel better. 1 turned into 10, 10 turned into 30. So there's lots of things to consider as we look at this. And frankly, the grant making policy committee, hey Jeff, we probably need to move that along a little bit. And I'm part of it. So I think we just, whatever Claudia is telling, we need to move forward on this thing so we can, because there are people dying today that need our help. So
Any other comments or questions or?
Just a second on that grant making committee. The conversation we had was very productive, but it was really short. Right? We needed another hour and a half or 2 hours to get through all the stuff that was there to talk about.
Agreed.
But the hour we had, I felt like it was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
So we just need to kick up the schedule a little bit and get that going every 2 weeks or every week, you know, for an hour and until we get our work done.
I agree. I would highly recommend you meet as often as you can.
Yeah,
And weekly, if you can do that, we can get this thing in.
Julie, at one point you had your hand up. Did you still have?
Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Okay.
But I just wanted to say, we do need the boots on the ground to put out what are perceived fires at the moment. And
That's just my take on it for the moment.
Okay, so I'd like to task the board members to come back with some percentages of how they would like to see the allocation. We will plug in a static number for operations. Don, do you believe a static number for investment, or do you believe a percentage?
I just believe your budget is not a function of percentages, it's a
Okay.
flat fee.
Okay, so throw me out a scenario number so that I can.
We said 1.2, for example, for this year's budget.
She's talking about the
based on-
investment, Don. She's
Talking about the investment.
Not the budget, but the investment, not the
Okay.
operation, but the investment.
Well,
It's
let's
almost
talk about
a-
line.
That's a function. Now, I didn't see anything in MOU that says you must put aside money for investment. But that even being said, interest income off of our deposits with the two banks is investment per se. But again, to me, it goes back to how much we want to put out the regions. My region wants 100% of what is not operational to go to the regions.
Can you send out your spreadsheet so we don't all have to recreate all the little, I'm sure you spent some time.
As long as everybody recognizes it's for information discussion only, these are just scenarios. So, it sounds like a lot of the folks are in favor of the regional projects. When doing that, please just think about projects that are transformational. Because this is one-time money. Please don't use this money like many counties did in the past with ARPA money. We got it, we're living on it, and now it's gone, and like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be have a shortfall. So make sure it really makes a difference in your region. Of course, we have more discussion in March, but think about it over the next 30 days about, how we would allocate and how you would use it within your regions, because I think that's extremely important. We're not gonna get this money again. We're just not. So let's make sure we get the best. we can.
Step to your question, the spreadsheet, it is in the Google Docs. We will be sending out a link to the board members to be able to access that, those Google Docs from today.
Well, it's right at 12:30. We can go longer or we can adjourn. We don't need a motion because we don't have quorum anyway, but we can just call it a day and come back
Hello?
next month.
Hey, can I just bring a quick comment before we close out?
Yes, please.
Okay, it sounds like the discussion that we're having is around how much money should go out to the regions and in what schedule, and how much money should be kept to do statewide projects. I just want to state, as we comment on this, I believe that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think we can do both of these things. I am a big supporter of trying to have these assets go beyond 18 years. That this problem that we have is going to be greater than 18 years. And so I'm quite conservative in the space that perpetuity is where I'm interested in being. And so investing these dollars are the regional crisis that we're experiencing, the statewide crisis that we're experiencing will still be here in 18 years. And this is a one-time opportunity, I think, for this body to make sure that we're positioning the state so that we can fight this crisis as it morphs greater than the 18 years that we're talking about. So I'm a supporter. I think that statewide initiatives are very important. I think that's where we can think big. And that doesn't negate the regions, which I'm in Hamilton County, specifically in Cincinnati. And Commissioner Driehaus here is representing those grants that will come from our area. But that, for me, doesn't negate the role of the state and how it must weigh in, which might be of different interest than the regions have. So you'll hear me, when I weigh in on this, I don't want to castrate the regions, but I also want to make sure that there's dollars for the state. But most importantly, I'm a big supporter of perpetuity. Any discussion that we can have about going beyond 18 years, I think is incredibly important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I go into that? So, I'm sorry, to me, this is like a war, right? We're at war. And I almost look at it like we're Ukraine and opiates is Russia, right? That's how, the numbers are, right? There's so much of this stuff coming at us all the time, and the number of people that are dying. I mean, we, had another couple die in Fairfield County last, right? So it continues to come at us, and when you're at war, you don't necessarily plan for what's this war going to be like 18 years from now, right? You don't hold back 20% of your soldiers or 30% of your soldiers and all your resources to say, well, we're in it, for the long run. I understand, that there's a chance that this thing may be around 18 years from now, but as I said in my comments that I emailed out to everybody, 18 years ago, we didn't know this existed. Or very few of us did, right? 18 years from now, let's hope it's not. But the way that we get to that point is by putting everything we can against this as much as we can right now. And just, I mean, it's a war. It's a war. And I don't advocate at all for holding back and setting aside resources for year 25. Hopefully we won't need year 25.
Well, if anybody has any comments or something they think about over the next month, please feel free to email me. Or if you want to pick up a phone, call me, feel free to do that.
Who all is on the grant making committee? Who would want to make comments to them?
Tom is the chair, but you can send to Catherine for a month.
Absolutely. I will be more than happy to forward those on to the grant.
Do we have to bring these back?
No, you don't.
We will gladly provide.
Did everyone like, well, we had one that did not work, so I apologize. How did the iPads work for the board this time?
I like it. Does this mean you're not going to email the entire packet out anymore?
Yes, they will. They will, but it's just-
Okay, this for here.
Just for here, yeah, you will get the board packet, yes, we have, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have a box of them.
Oh, so we can take for all of our board members?
Yes.
Our region board, oh,
Thank you.